So even if there is a discussion arising on a word called freedom, let me give you one example. The word freedom basically was used in the constitution of in the preamble of Jawaharlal Nehru. But people would be surprised to know that in the final preamble, there was no as such word of freedom. In fact, the word freedom was replaced with liberty. Now, thereafter comes a thing. How could be possible that freedom was replaced with liberty? And it was done so easily. No, when Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru's preambles was introduced, in clause 4th, there is a particular line which says that there should be justice, social, economic, and political for the people. And that was there in the preamble of the Jawaharlal Nehru, right? But there is no as such solution being pressed by Jawaharlal Nehru. But when you read Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's preamble, which was released after 2 months of the Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble, there Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar not only mentioned this justice on the ground of social, economic, and political, but also emphatically lay down a particular solution. And what is the solution is given specifically in his preamble is that justice on political, social, and economic while removing inequalities. So
what are justice, liberty, and equality from Ambedkar's standpoint, right? And how do they differ from Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble? Is there any kind of difference, or just differentiate these from Jawaharlal Nehru's?
3 preambles were produced before the Constituent Assembly, but there was decisions to be made on as to whose preamble must be. People must know, and this is something which needs to be noted down, is that neither of the preamble means none of the 3 preambles were selected. Especially,
whose contribution do you think is paramount, especially to the making of this constitution?
Who actually dealt with clause by clause, word by word of the constitution through his debates, through his discussions. In other words, the person who has participated more in discussions, in debates, based on all those clauses written in the constitution to just prove the worth of those articles, is the one who is the chief architect of the constitution.
Welcome back, Robin, and welcome back, in this particular episode. And what we are going to discuss in this particular episode is it is a kind of book review, which is the book's name is title is Ambedkar's Preamble, and right. So the book deals with the as we already know that what preamble is. It is the introduction, right, and to the Constitution. But what Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's vision was when he wrote this constitution. So this is something which is very much clearly defined in this book, and the conversation is going to revolve around the same, and we'll be talking about all those important aspects of the book which people need to know, and which makes this book a good read, right? So before we start discussing those important points, especially about the book, you just tell a little about the same, so that we can have a smooth conversation, and the clarity should be there in the people's minds that how the book is going to be useful for them if they go for this book.
Okay, good evening to you and good evening to everyone. Just a little correction. The writer name of the book is Aakash Singh Rathore. Okay, it is just the name I think is very popular these days. Because if you see, especially across the India, there has been a discussion all over that who wrote the Constitution. And this has been a burning debate in our current time. And many of the people are now referring many of those books just to find out the reasonable sources and the knowledge on which they could really conclude as to who really wrote the Constitution. But this book is not all about the Constitution. It is just, you can say, a part of the Constitution, which is often called as the soul of the Indian Constitution, that is called Preamble.
Mm-hmm.
So there has been a lot of discussion and debate on this issue as to who wrote this, preamble of the Constitution, right? We all know what preamble is all about. Preamble is nothing but a very guideline of the Constitution. So, for example, if any Constitution and its articles or provisions are interpreted, it has to be done in the light of the preamble. So, this preamble provides certain guideline, and that should not be violated. This should not be broken in any way, because what it is very important in terms of maintaining and balancing the sanctity of the Constitution. Right now, this is about the introduction of the book. But as we all know, that since the preamble of the Constitution is a certain book which delves with so many informative uh, historical evidences, and one who reads that book will certainly find out as to who really contributed much to the Constitution, especially to the making of the preamble of the Constitution. But still, we will try to focus more on the relevant part of the book, because we are not intended to even declare someone to be the entirely responsible for the creation of this marvelous piece. Otherwise, there might be some controversies arising on that, as we all know what is happening right now, because
Mm-hmm.
this preamble or the Constitution both have been divided into opinions of people, means the people have been divided into groups, and all these people have their own particular idea and their opinions on this. So we'll try to refrain specifically this particular part,
Mm-hmm.
so that this could be very well intact, balancing all information and knowledge, especially for the student purposes. But why this book is important and why we should read it, because this book uh, tells and lays down a few important things, and these things start right with three important preambles. For example, many people really don't know about this preamble at the first place, and this is also very difficult for the same people to know that the preamble that we read and now have as a frame right on the first page of the Constitution was not the first preamble at all. Because before this preamble was finalized, especially in the year 1949, in the month of November, perhaps, right? So, in the month of February, right? There were three more preambles were introduced. One was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru, which is known as Objective Resolution, right? That was introduced especially in the year 1947, something around January. And after 2 months, in 1947, Ambedkar released his own preamble, because he wrote that a book. Actually, there was a state and minorities kind of memorandum which he presented in the parliament, and there he presented this preamble in the same memorandum, right? And after this came out as the third preamble in the list somewhere in the month of May, especially in 1947, and that was emerging right from B.N. Rao. B.N. Rao was all about the advisory committee, means he was the advisor of the Constituent Assembly. So these three important preambles came out, and the discussion that revolves around which is so mysterious, and this particular book reveals out this mystery, that as to whose preamble was selected and opted out at the end of the day, because three preambles were produced before the Constituent Assembly, but there was decisions to be made on as to whose preamble must be. People must know, and this is something which needs to be noted down, is that neither of the preamble, means none of the three preambles were uh, selected especially for the final preamble. And thereafter comes some mystery, and this arises a mystery, is that who wrote the fourth preamble, which was exactly the same preamble, the final draft of the preamble, which we still uh, frame it as the constitution in the constitution of India, right? So their mystery is revolving around who particular man introduced this fourth preamble. Some people say that this fourth number of preamble was nothing but uh, uh, conglomerations, or you can say concoctions of all these previously mentioned three preambles. Some say it was a preamble written by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. So all these things we are going to clear, and what this mystery is all about, and how the writer solved this mystery, declaring as to who is really the creator of this preamble. So all these things we are going to deliver and try to understand with full facts and evidences according to the book as given.
Hmm. So, for example, if a person has to go for this book and because they want to read it, so they must know what the book is all about. I mean, what this book, Ambedkar's preamble, is all about.
Hmm.
Until or unless they know about it, they cannot even decide. So, whether should they should go for this book or not. So, can you tell me what the book is all about and what are the most important thing about book so that this book can be helpful for the people and this can lay a solid foundation for the people's understanding of the Constitution of India.
See, if someone wants to know and accumulate knowledge on constitution, and especially how the constitution was made and who was the real contributor to this constitution, then I think this book could really meet up with those expectations. However, this book doesn't give the entire sequences and the precedents following which this entire constitution was made, because this book, as the name suggests, preamble, Ambedkar's preamble. So it is revolving around preamble. So we all know how important preamble is. So thereafter, the next question comes: who was the major person? With the help of that person, this preamble could be finalized, could be made out, right? Because as I told you, I mean, three different preambles were introduced in the Constituent Assembly, and every time when when the preamble was introduced, there had been a lot of discussion and debate on that, because preamble doesn't mean only to be reading a particular uh, preamble, which includes some words, right? Because a preamble is basically a part of descriptive, objective, and declarative. So it was not all about just to read it, but also to have a deep, delving discussion and debate on each and every word, whatsoever it is. So this particular preamble, Ambedkar's preambles, highlights all those nuances, especially for all those students who really want to know much about preamble and who want to know the intellect precision ability of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar as to how he quickly got this the unknown preamble, which was not listed in the last three preambles as introduced in the Constituent Assembly, right? And when we read this book, we really get enthralled by this intelligence of the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar as to how he was able to do that. And people still got shocked, as someone told, especially from the same Constituent Assembly, that even they don't know by this date that who actually introduced this fourth preamble, because it was not possible to have this fourth preamble at the same time in such a short span of time. So someone even stated, I don't exactly have the exact wordings of that, but he told in the Constituent Assembly that the fourth preamble was something from someone's uh, backside, right? So there was a clear mysterious mystery revolving around this issue as to who introduced this fourth preamble. So this book is particularly for law students, or also those students who really want to know about the constitution and to know about the ability of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, his expertise and his overall understanding about the constitution, social, political, and economical issues of the country.
Yeah. So I'm asking you a question which is a way different from the kind of questions we're gonna discuss. So as there are so many articles in the Constitution, and sometimes I get to see and I get to read that there are some kind of amendments in them as per the requirement. So tell me, are these amendments gonna change or do they change the entire article or there is a slight change in the article? What is what the reality is? I'm just asking you, although this is not the part of this particular discussion, but this is I'm asking you this out of curiosity.
Okay, so see, amendments are always the part of the constitutions. We
Mm-hmm.
all know that the constitution, that the society is on continuous path of change,
Mm-hmm.
and we cannot really have those fixed laws and regulations. So
Mm-hmm.
accordingly, we have to mold the law a little bit in
Mm-hmm.
order to meet with the expectations of the changing circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, for example, before 1947, there was a polygamy culture, especially in India. A man
Mm-hmm.
can have more than two, wife, and it was continued to be a part of Indian cultural or society until 1956. The Hindu Marriage Act was introduced, which completely restricted this polygamy practice in the country, and also announced some punishments for those who do that. Right. So accordingly, we see that yes, amendments are really important, and it becomes a need for the society because if we don't change according to the circumstances, then we really uh, try to impose certain laws on certain people or a segment of people, which really is not having that tendency to produce results, positive results. Because if you go against the need of, or the expectation of the people, then ultimately it is a failure of the society at large. So the laws and the regulations and the rules and the ordinances, whatsoever it is, in the name of the constitution, it must ensure that it must be following the need of the society, the governing rules of the society. And if it is not, then sometimes we have to face the utter failure as a society at large, right? So amendments are truly the part of the constitution,
Mm-hmm.
and it will always be there, and it has to be there because it is just a natural part of the constitution.
So you simply want to say that to maintain the order, I mean law and order, to maintain to bring the order in the people's lives, and to let them have the freedom. Such kind of amendments are made from time to time. Okay. So the next thing which we have to discuss, tell me what are justice, liberty, and equality from Ambedkar's standpoint, right? And how do they differ from Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble? Is there any kind of difference, or just differentiate these from Jawaharlal Nehru's?
Okay, first of all, let me just present you a little bit background.
Hmm.
And the background uh, comes into this light. Uh, you know that these days there has been too much violence from both the communities, the lower and the upper communities. Especially, I come from a law background, and I know there has been a strong demand from the lower people, especially lower caste people, SC, ST, OBC, that the statue of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar must be installed in the Gwalior High Court, right? And for some of the reasons, the statue could not be installed, right? But what happened is that the entire issue has been almost, uh, I mean, treated as a political event, and therefore many political parties have come into this matter and made it politicized completely, right? And now thereafter, this discussion started as to who wrote the constitution. So for this, many people have started reading and showing and referring number of books to just know this, to just support their point, to support their instances, right? Now, when we talk about this particular issue, justice, uh, and how the justice or social or economic or equality is
And liberty
differs
as
from
well.
liberty, differs from Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble,
Mm-hmm.
then we must be, first of all, be clear that the entire discussion is all about to make a distinction between the preamble that was introduced, especially in 1949, right? And that was the final preamble, and its comparison between the three past introduced preambles and that were done in the year 1947. The first one was Jawaharlal Nehru himself. Its name was Objective Resolution. The second preamble was introduced by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar just 2 months after the Objective Resolutions, as a preamble was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru. And the third one by B.N. Rao, who was the advisor of the Constituent Assembly. Now, the entire discussions revolving around as to how we can make a distinction between these two segments of preambles. On the one side, we have three preambles, and on the other side, we have the final preamble. Many people now hold a strong opinion on the fourth preamble, right? And how they try to solve this just by comparing two preambles. On the one side, we have the final preamble, and on the other side, we have this three preambles. So the distinction or or the similarities or whatsoever is happening, the differences, whatsoever it is happening between the two preambles,
Mm.
right? So what we try to understand, and how do we understand here is that first of all we need to see the preamble of Jawaharlal Nehru, which is known as Objective Resolution, right? When you read Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble, Objective Resolution, you will find that there are terms used in that preamble, such as justice. Justice, thereafter comes social, economic, and political justice, right? Now, Jawaharlal Nehru is talking about that justice is really important, and this justice must be done on these three front: social, economic, and politics,
Mm.
political, right? Now, when we read the final preamble, the fourth preamble, which was the final preamble, we see the similar writings, which is almost similar to what was written in the first preamble, right? But how we can understand as to who was the real, uh, authority of this writing, and thereafter comes a discussion, and the discussions goes into historical, evidences to search out as to who really worked hard, especially in the making of the final preamble.
Mm.
And thereafter, we concluded that it was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who was the one who really had a personal experiences with the justice. For example, many people come out and say that it is Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble, so the credit must be given to Jawaharlal Nehru, right? But the expert says is that when you talk about justice, particularly, and justice that too on the front of social, economic, and politics or political, we need to understand someone's point of view, especially the one who has lived that concept, not just merely written that. For
Yeah.
example, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar himself lived the entire concept of justice. How? Because throughout his life, he suffered he suffered discriminations,
Mm.
inequalities,
Mm-hmm.
even on social, economical, and political, aspects. Right? What do we learn, especially from the life of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, especially when he got educated and got some high degrees from abroad university? Even then, he was eschewed the way, especially in this country, right? So what it shows is that Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar had a personal experience of this justice or injustice, especially injustice on social, economic, and political. So whatever he writes, specifically on this part, his particular words, his ideas, his experiments must be holding much value and weightage, because he himself suffered a lot in the same country. So it was not Jawaharlal Nehru who faced all these discriminations in his entire life, but the Ambedkar. Therefore, we try to conclude that it was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who really contributed much to this part justice, specifically as framed in the preamble of the Constitution. This is really important. Second important part, which we must understand as a viewer or as a student of law or as a common person, just for the understanding purpose, is that Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar wrote a number of books that incorporates ideas such as justice on social, economic, and political. For example, he wrote State and Minorities. a particular book which was produced as memorandum in the Constituent Assembly, and the entire book is basically dealing with social, economic, and political justice, where Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar uh, happened to discuss about his social discrimination. And he also talks about that how the social discrimination can be completely vanished from the country, and how the country could be more united, right? So this is what Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar talks and deals with this concept. Is one of those books called Annihilation of Caste, in
Mm.
which he extensively deals with this social evil which is called caste system, which he talks about and focuses how we can eradicate this particular caste system from the country so that we could be united. Now these are the books which conclude Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's depth understanding about justice, right? Second most important thing, which is also a third most important thing, which I think viewers must try to understand, is that when Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru's preambles was introduced in clause fourth, there is a particular line which says that there should be justice, social, economic, and political for the people, and that was there in the preamble of the Jawaharlal Nehru, right? But there is no as such solution being pressed by Jawaharlal Nehru. But when you read Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's preamble, which was released after 2 months of the Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble, there Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar not only mentioned this justice on the ground of social, economic, and political, but also emphatically uh, uh, lay down a particular solution. And what is the solution is given specifically in his preamble is that justice on political, social, and economic while removing inequalities. So this very phrase, "while removing inequalities," was not there in the preamble of Jawaharlal Nehru, and that itself shows how deep Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar were in his concept in not just understanding the social evil and the prevailing conditions of the society, but also having a lot of solutions to tackle all this. So this alone shows how Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was so keen to press this social evil, right, to come out in the limelight and uh, you know uh, somewhere target these and try to make country completely united, right? So now it is just a part of the book which I am dealing with now. People
So
who are going
you
to read about it must read their own and try to understand, right?
So you simply want to say because if we talk about Ambedkar's life, he comes from a very humble background, or he comes from, I think a Dalit family, right? So he experienced all those things, and then because he had the common touch actually. You
Hmm.
can understand people if you've got the common touch. And we talk about Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru. So he comes from a very aristocratic family.
Hmm.
So I think his understanding of these people may not be that much, that much as compared to Ambedkar, right? Because yes, you can feel, but you cannot actually experience that. You
Hmm.
can simply sympathize with them, but if you have never been in those situations, finding yourself to be, to be in their shoes is going to be quite impossible for you, right? So that's why we can see that, yes, and that's why Ambedkar's preamble was accepted,
Hmm.
right? Because they just wanted to deliver justice to these people,
Hmm.
and that's why it was accepted. And this is what my
but
personal
but
understanding is.
but it was not Ambedkar preambles was accepted. It was
Okay.
the number fourth preamble that was accepted, but it is basically assumed that the fourth number preamble was written himself by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, but it is not disclosed yet because the
Okay.
wordings, the framing of the words, all these
Mm.
were somewhere relevant, and how it could be understood and assumed that it was written by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, because Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar extensively dealt with all those concepts throughout his work. So, for example, he, you know, I mean, wrote many books And in all those books, he extensively dealt with all those concepts: justice, social, political issues, dignity, fraternity,
mm.
everything. So, whatsoever words you find in the preamble, you will have all these books written by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, and therefore Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's authority is asserted to be as the authority of the preamble than other, his counterparts such as Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru or the B.N. Rao. So this alone signifies this particular thing. Yes.
The identity of the person whose preamble was accepted was kept under the wraps, so that their they didn't want to you can say disclose it, because there could have been some some other possible situations, and that's why I think it was not revealed and it was kept under the wraps.
No, even this was not, because Constitution Assembly was all open,
Okay.
and Constitution Assembly was all open, and every clause, every particular concept of the word that was basically introduced to the Constituent Assembly, all the members have to go through multiple layers of discussions and debates.
Mm-hmm.
So, therefore, even people don't have any idea as to how this preamble, this mysterious preamble, emerged from somewhere, because no one has that particular speculation as to who could really produce that number fourth preamble in such a short span of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But since who reads this book, secondly, who know the works of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, third important thing, who's the expert of law, mostly people who come from this background, especially law, and who have this basic understanding of constitutions, everyone knows that it is nothing but right from Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. However, his name has not been disclosed, and that is what is the basic controversial thing of this
Mm-hmm.
part, where people are trying to, prove their authority as a superior authority who really produced this preamble. For example, if you talk some other political parties, they will come out and say it is not Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who actually produced this, preamble, which was the final preamble. Now, political parties have come out in this discussion, and they're trying to, just raise their particular, favorite, making it popular, especially among people. So it is just has been between political parties, between two political parties or three
Mhm.
political
They
parties.
they
So
must have got some hidden agenda, like they just want
yes,
to they this is all about party and all.
right.
So the next point which we have to discuss, keeping the book in light, that how much is it is justifiable that the word nation is placed at the end of the preamble, right? Because it is being placed at the end. So is it justifiable, justified, or what is your take on it?
Okay, let me first tell you one thing. Because being a student of the law, there has been always a curiosity in me as to when we talk about nation, we always have to be very much sincere about it in terms of doing anything, especially to the nation, because whatever we do, we have to do in the limit. As specifically, it should not be hurting the interest of the nation, because
Mhm.
whatsoever we do must be falling in the ambit of of the nation. Means nation's interest, nation integrity must not be violated. Now, when I understand our nation to be given this much superiority, and I think this is very valid, because we are of the nation, not nation is of the right, us. So from that aspect, we understand the relevance and the significance of the nation, because nation is our identity, right?
Mhm.
But when I read the preamble, I find the word, nation coming right from right, below, right above the declarative part, and that is, nation. So I really got shocked, I really got, confused as to how one could be so much insensible, or maybe so immature, to discuss this very nation concept in the preamble,
Mhm.
right at the end of the preamble, when it should be given at the top, because nation comes first. For example, for example, our fundamental rights uh, are very important part of the
Yeah.
constitution, right? But when you read Article 19 of the Indian constitutions, where we have 5 to 6 fundamental rights, but these fundamental rights are not absolute right, these are qualified rights.
Mm.
And what does it mean is that you may practice your fundamental rights as falling in this Article 19, but it should not be going against the interest or the integrity of the country.
The country, yeah.
So this shows us how nation is important to us, and there and still we have the word nation. Now, when I try to find out why it is so and how it all happened, and therefore sometimes I really found a little bit objection. I mean, this particular thing, according to me, was objectionable, and I, even being a student of law, I mean, held some negative views on Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar as to how Bhimrao Ambedkar could be insensible to this very part. But when I read that book, I really found so much interesting things regarding this. So, first of all, Doctor, in the opinion of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, the country the country when needs to be nation, it requires all the people living in this
Come together,
territory
right? To come together.
must come together,
Mm.
united through a particular soul bond. And how it is possible when all people have a certain feeling towards each other. People are sympathetic towards either compassionate towards each other, right? So the word fraternity, which was not used or introduced neither in the preamble of Dr. Jawaharlal Nehru, which is called Objective Resolution,
Mm-hmm.
nor in B.N. Rao preamble. So it was the word that was a fresh introduction, and that was done solely by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. So fraternity, which goes like this, that fraternity means that fraternity, ensuring fraternity, dignity of all individual,
Mm-hmm.
dignity of all individual, and unity of the nation. So, what it means, according to Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, is that until there is a fraternity among people, fraternity means social bond, right? There cannot be a formation of nation. So,
Nation.
therefore, this very phrase, that fraternity ensuring the dignity of individual and the nation of the unity of the nation. So,
Mm.
unity of the nation is or can be determined only on the basis of how the people in the country are closely bound towards each other with a bond of love, affection, compassionate, kind, humanity. And if it is, then particularly a country could be a nation. That was the first reason. And when I got to know about it, I really found so much, I think, exhilaration, because this shows how uh, expert Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, right? Now, there is a question which is really important and which needs to be, I think, uh, targeted here. When you go and check the entire discussion and debate which is happening, especially on the preamble side, many people are accusing Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar for his selection of fraternity word, as he took this word from French Revolution, right? Because this fraternity concept was perhaps used in the French Constitution too, right? So many people say this man has taken and borrowed this word, from the French Constitution. Some people say that Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar borrowed this word from Mahatma Gandhi's work, because Mahatma Gandhi somewhat, on some occasions talked about this fraternity, right? But why we should understand and consider this particular fraternity word as to be only emerging from Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar for few reasons. And these reasons are very important. We must all understand. And this all explanation, trust me, has been given in this book, which we must read. So, for example, in the book, we come to know that when there was a question in the Constituent Assembly as to from where the word particular, fraternity was borrowed from, then many people started, giving that the references, right? But the true reference came right from the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar himself, where he was talking about, French Revolution, where he was talking about Marxist philosophy. For example, he tried to juxtaposition, you know, Marxist philosophy as well as Marxist philosophy with French Revolution, because what was similar in both these events is that there was a missing of fraternity among people, and therefore there was a revolution arose, right? So this is a very keynote which I want to highlight here, is that on the one side we have on the one side we have first this Marxist philosophy. And what Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar says on this Marxist philosophy is that the Marxist philosophy based on the part where it was only based on improvement of economy of the people, right? So in this way, they are not dealing with the social issues. This is really important for our viewers, that it was not about social condition. It was only about economic. So
Yeah.
according to Marx, if someone's economic condition is improved, then things can be sorted out, right? But if you compare it with Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's conditions, for example, we have discussed it in the prior part of this same video, where we learned that how Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar came from abroad universities, getting more educations and being educated, but still he was not getting that much treatment, right? And it was just because of he was not, you know, accepted with this sense of brotherhood. So there was no action in the sense, in the spirit of brotherhood in the country. And the similar thing, especially in the Marxist philosophy. So there is a difference, sorry, there is a similarities between the two. So therefore, the missing of fraternity in the Marxist philosophy is really important and must be noticed. And the same thing was missed, especially in the French revolutions. How this French revolution came into limelight, even when we all know that all these people who were the representatives, especially in the French assembly, they were the representatives of those all proletariat section of people. But these people who were the representatives were not dealing with the expectations and fulfilling the needs of those their constituents member. Why? Because they don't have, or they didn't have any love and affections for their own people. So
People.
therefore, he concluded that it was fraternity which was missing in both French Revolution and the Marxist Revolution, right? And if they were there, especially in those revolutions, I think the situation would not have been arisen. And similar thing happened in this country, that we need to work on fraternity, even when we have justice, politics, social or economic. But even we don't have when we don't have this, fraternity concept, then I think this particular country cannot be united. And
Yeah.
therefore, he proved that fraternity is really, really important for the country to survive as a nation, as a complete nation.
The same thing was found by the English people when they came to India. They found that people in India were, they were quarreling themselves, right? And they found that they can now divide and rule these people, right? So if we keep, fighting like this, there is no unity, there is no fraternity between us. I think we become more and more, vulnerable, and
Right.
we cannot make a strong country. And if the country is not very strong, then we cannot expect
Hmm.
ourselves to be ruling
Hmm.
the right. I'm not talking about that kind of rule, but I'm talking about that we cannot be among the top ranking countries, right? As we
Hmm.
can see there, there are always studies going that there are some indexes like happiness index, and the success, as people, where certain countries where people are successful. So this is how the countries are rated. So if we don't have this kind of a unity, I think we will always be either at the bottom or somewhere in the middle, but we cannot see ourselves climbing the ladder to the top, right? So the next thing which we
One more thing I want to add, and
Mhm,
I think this will make easy for the viewers to understand.
mhm,
When we talk about fraternity, we can really relate it with current ongoing situation.
mhm,
What do we see now and experience these days? That there has been a complete, rejection of the reservation system in India. Means
mhm,
there is a rising demand from one section of people that say that the reservation should be completely terminated or suspended from the country because it somewhere compromises with the meritocracy. I
mhm,
understand that. And at the same time, when we see some SC, ST, OBC people come out and attain certain positions specifically, the same people are criticized by the upper caste people, because then they become a particular subject of disrespect or humiliation, because upper caste people then start calling them certificate based progress. Certificate based progress means reservation based progress, which means they don't give them their self birth kind of realization. Now
Due
fraternity as
respect.
a concept,
Mm-hmm.
fraternity as a concept could be really important. So therefore Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar says that even if a person comes from this lower strata and attains a certain position, even in the government or in a society, with the help of reservations, according to Article 15, right, or 16, then if people and the country practice this fraternity, they will really encourage those people, considering them the part of the society, considering all those humiliations and atrocities that they face throughout their life in their historical time. And if it is possible, then this particular country could be nation. So how beautifully Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, tried to, justify the word fraternity even in today's context. Yes.
Yeah. So you rightly said that we should be realizing the importance of this fraternity and the importance of unity, because it is said that united we stand and divided
Right.
we fall. So the same applies to the nation as well. If we are united, then nation is strong, stands strong, and if we are divided, then somewhere it is going to fail,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
In all from all quarters, right?
Hmm.
The next thing which you have to tell me is that whose contribution do you think is paramount, especially to the making of this constitution? Is
I
it?
think this is all that major discussion and controversial part of the constitution and
Mm-hmm.
of the debate these days. You just open any TV channel and you will have this discussion going on. So we have people divided in their opinions. Some people say it is not Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who should be held as the chief architect of the constitution. They say that it is B.N. Rao who should be, given this very appreciation for his work, because he was the one who presented the first draft, right? So, therefore, that's how this very controversy and the discussion and debate goes on. Now, this question is really important, and I lay down a particular guide guideline for following this. Our viewers could understand this. First of all, we need to understand that when we say controversy arising on the issue as to who should be held as the chief architect of the Constitution, remember we should not understand it in the context of as to who has written the Constitution. This is really a clear and a specified part which really people must first understand, and thereafter they start their journey of understanding the constitution and to understand who actually deal extensively with the constitution, right? Now the next question comes in, then what else is there for us to
Mm.
understand,
Yes.
grasp? For example, we all know that India's constitution is a borrowed constitution, right? The significant part of the Indian constitutions was borrowed right from 1935 Government Act, even when there was no independency in India. Our India got independent in the year 1947,
7 years.
and Government Act was released in 1935. So, for example, B.N. Rao, the advisor of the Constituent Assembly, is often appreciated and is highlighted as the first drafter of the Indian Constitution, and therefore he should be given this title of the chief architect of the Constitution. One must not forget that more than 250 articles were borrowed right from 1935. And now the viewers may ask the third question, who wrote this 1935 Government Act? Then it was completely based on England Parliament,
Mm.
right? So we don't have any contribution. This is a very clear, cut, a, a drawn a line, right? Which we must not violate. The entire discussion, which is now, um, I think, going I think is on the wrong path, where people are discussing as to who wrote the constitution. See, no one has written the constitution has been borrowed. So when people say it is B.N. Rao who wrote the constitution, in fact, B.N. Rao borrowed the major part of the constitution from 1935. This was now what is there for all of us as viewers to understand, because we have already given credit to British Parliament for making the constitution. Now, what is left for us to even appreciate about Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, or let's say other constituent assembly members or the drafting committee members, right? Now, this is really important part, and this is where the discussion or the debate must be held. So, how we should understand it as to who drafted this constitution is that who actually dealt with clause by clause, word by word of the constitution through his debates, through his discussions. In other words, the person who has participated more in discussions, in debates, based on all those clauses written in the constitution to just prove the worth of those articles is the one who is the chief architect of the constitution. For example, there the final draft of the Indian constitution before it was finalized or enacted, especially in 1949, in the month of November, in the month of November 1949, the entire draft was produced before the parliament, the constituent assembly. And thereafter, the discussions and debate began on each and every point written in the constitution. Now, it is estimated that there were around 160 around total sittings. And out of total sitting, 114 days were finalized for discussions and debates. Now, there is a clear data, especially in those books, if you read, that 90% and above meetings were, I think, presented by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, which means Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar presence were almost unparalleled in terms of its percentage. It was only Bhimrao Ambedkar who was presented in 80 or 90% of the total, debates and discussion. So even if there is a discussion arising on a word called freedom, let me give you one example. The word freedom basically was used in the constitution of, in the preamble of Jawaharlal Nehru. But people would be surprised to know that in the final preamble, there was no as such word of freedom. In fact, the word freedom was replaced with liberty. Now, thereafter comes a thing. How could be possible that freedom was replaced with liberty and it was done so easily? No, it was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who emphatically, uh, produced this word and debated on that word and finally uh, took a consensus of all the constituent assembly. We must understand that all these members of the constituent assemblies were very intelligent, right? So it was a difficult task, almost a Hercules task for the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar to deal with each and every word in the clauses and to make it passed or to get it passed with the consensus of all this constituent assembly. And it could only be possible when someone has a sharp intellect, deep knowledge, historical understanding about everything. Only then he could really make it pass. And that's what happened in this case. I just want to give one example of freedom and liberty, which is important. Many people say that in Jawaharlal Nehru's preamble, there was a word of freedom, but how it was replaced with liberty, especially in the final draft. So when there was a discussion arising or debate arising, that how much suitable it is to use the word liberty, then it was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar who stood and spoke very emphatically on this very part, that the word liberty is much political than the word freedom. Freedom is somewhat, uh, signified as a metaphysical word, right? And therefore, it doesn't suit in the particular constitution, in the particular, preamble. Second reason he gave in his particular discussion or through his debate is that when you talk about freedom, because Mahatma Gandhi was the one who dealt with freedom a lot. throughout his, uh, freedom,
Hmm.
or through the struggle, freedom struggle.
Freedom struggle.
But
Yes.
when he talked about a struggle, he was only indicating Hindus to be uh, independent or to be freed from British tyrannical establishment.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no as such indication as to whether Mahatma Gandhi is including untouchables, especially in the group of Hindu, right? So when Mahatma Gandhi raises this term freedom, he actually uses this term especially under the umbrella of this one particular thought process, and that is that we Hindus want to be freed from British establishment.
Mm-hmm.
But when Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar uses the word liberty, he basically uses this term to introduce the social discrimination, economical discrimination, and political discriminations, and that to be that were all held by their own people within the country. So therefore, he focused on liberty, which means until unless the people living in the country, specifically the untouchables and all the SC, ST, and OBC people, are not freed from the tyranny of upper caste, this particular country cannot be united,
Mm.
right? Or this
Yes.
particular country cannot be held as a nation. So most expert, you know, understand this entire, event of discussion, that when you use the term liberty, you are subsuming both in the sense that you are targeting the upper caste, the one from whom you want to have freedom, and also the British establishment. So here, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, including both tyrannical forces, uh, upper caste as well as the British establishment. Because according to Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, until the people living in the country are not safe from their own people living in the country, how can they be safe even after the British releases India from all those shackles? So
Mm.
thereafter, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar ensures that first of all, this should be done at the first priority. So how interesting this entire discussion was, and this was what Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar's precision and intellect ability to deal with each and everything.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes. As now you've heard everything, right? You know that what was this preamble of Ambedkar was all about, right? And through whatever Robin said, I think it is very clear that why was Ambedkar's preamble was then accepted, right? Because it was always talking about justice for the people who were downtrodden, right? Who did not have many opportunities, and it had everything which a preamble was supposed to have, other than all those other preambles which were submitted for consideration. And I think, with this, people must have got the reality, and they should be going for this book. And this is really very much, knowledgeable, and this can be useful if you really want to know about, know all about preamble. I think it's a good read, and people should definitely be going for it, and they will be getting to know all those things which they are not familiar with, or which they are not aware of, right? So with this, I'm going to conclude it, and we'll be seeing we'll be seeing in the next video, and we will have a definitely very interesting topic to discuss, and something which is going to give people some knowledge and some information. So I'm wrapping it up. I'll see you in the next video.